What's going on, guys? This is Oliver, formerly from Response AI, and now from a few different products, trycomb.com and getseer.com. In this video, guys, I wanted to talk about how to onboard SaaS users so that they fall in love with your product. Okay, so in general, the onboarding process is the most important part of the journey for a SaaS customer because it's going to result in them either paying you for a long time or just canceling the product immediately, you know? So in general, the moment a user signs up, they're not a customer yet. They're a sort of skeptic with a browser tab open, and they're sort of asking, will this solve my problem, or will this waste my time, you know? And onboarding is your sort of one shot to get them into that mood of buying and telling them that they're going to solve their problem with your solution. Now, onboarding isn't a tutorial. It's more like a handshake. And if you're a solo founder and you're building software, it's more important than ever to connect with the user on the onboarding, you know? Now, basically, you can accelerate trust while not giving people too much attention, because if you're scaling up and doing a lot of work per user, it's going to be very hard for you to scale and serve a lot of customers if you're spending hours and hours helping each customer. So that's why the onboarding's got to be perfect, right? The old sort of playbooks like welcome emails and feature tours and tooltips, that kind of thing, they fail because they focus on your product, not the user's transformation from having a problem to solving it. So less teaching, more revealing. So the fatal sort of error that founders make, especially sort of solo SaaS founders, is they think that people care about how your product works, right? So all of the bells and whistles, what works in the background, what servers are being run, what things like that. All they care about, guys, is what you can do for them and how it solves the problem that they've signed up to actually solve. So an example is Scribe, which is a documentation tool. It's very, very good. Basically, it helps you create documentation for like tasks. So say if in your bakery you have a task that you take the bread out of the oven, you put it in the pantry, or you put it in the sort of front display. Scribe technically would allow you to document each step of that so that new employees could, sort of learn from it. Now, in general, instead of a sort of 5-step setup tour explaining how to create one of these sort of like documentation guides, their onboarding begins with a single prompt: paste a link to a video or something like that, a website of something that you explain to others. So within seconds, the AI generates a shareable tutorial, letting the user experience that core value before they've even learned the interface or even logged in or even paid, for example. So what we're doing is we're creating an experience where the user gets value immediately, and they don't get value after being guided through something. They get that immediate sort of aha moment. Now, this mirrors the peekaboo principle from child psychology. So humans engage deepest when discovery feels self-directed. So in other words, you're supposed to create moments where value reveals itself through something that the user has done, instead of just trying to flail it in their face like, oh, look, this is really exciting, look what we can do. Ideally, that comes from a decision that your user has made, you know? Now, with pre-onboarding, onboarding starts before the sign-up button. So before users have bought, before they've done anything, you can treat your landing page as the sort of first onboarding screen, you know? So consider Float, right, which is a cash flow forecasting tool. So their homepage doesn't lead with features. It more asks, how much cash do you expect to have in 6 months? Okay. Now, users who input a number are then shown a forecast, which isn't difficult. You know, it's just a bit of code on the website, and it shows you exact dates that you might be running low on. And then it says get started for free. So this does 3 things, right? It filters tire kickers, because only serious users will share their data, their financial data or their earnings data or whatever. It creates a curiosity gap. So the blurred graph, triggers loss aversion. So in other words, when you see that gap and you see that potential error in your bookkeeping, or you see like a problem in your forecast, it's going to trigger this curiosity like, how do I fix that? And it also front loads value. So the first aha moment happens pre-login. So you haven't even logged in yet and you've been given value by my company. There's a sort of shift in your psychology where you think, right, if I haven't even paid anything, how valuable is the paid thing going to be? You know, it's a continuum that begins with your first marketing touch point. So you can stop thinking of onboarding as this sort of post sign up sequence where you only get the goods when you log in, but rather how can you guys get your SaaS customer to get some value before they've even logged in, you know? Now, the 3 data points. So solo founders can't afford to be sort of complex and segment users and stuff like that, but you can steal a tactic from Superhuman's early days, right? So Superhuman is like an email tool, and they identify 3 data points that predict user success. Then they design the onboarding around them. So I'm not going to tell you what these data points are because I don't know. So the whole point is that data points, for example, get SIA, one of my SaaS, one of the, I suppose data points that would suggest that the user's getting value and like getting success from my app is how many leads they found on the tool, right? Now, for a B2B SEO tool, for example, it might be that entering a domain name and it also generates a technical audit. That might be data point 1. Have they done that? Then they can tell you what their primary content type is. So it could be blogs or it could be videos, whatever it may be. And then it preloads those relevant templates. And then whatever their biggest frustration is. So, for example, Google penalties, traffic drops, etc. And this tailors the first goal that they're reaching out for. So with SIA, for example, my SaaS, I typically ask them what their website is, what their business does, and then where their typical customers hang out, and then we help them find leads. So in general, if you have a certain amount of data points, you can ask AI for this, like, I've built this tool, what would my data points be? The most important ones are going to be the ones that you are going to bias towards on the onboarding. You've got to make sure that these people touch all those points, because otherwise they won't feel like they've been onboarded successfully. And then with these, you can create a sort of hyper-personalized dashboard that makes it feel like you're in the customer's shoes because you know what data and what transformations they're trying to get. Now, it's in the context of delivering this immediate value. So, enter your domain to see your top 3 SEO risks, for example. Now, in general, that means that you're going to get the immediate value, like we talked about earlier, from the forecast from Float, the forecast tool. It tells you exactly what your forecast is. And in general, we're defaulting again to giving them value before they've even paid or logged in. And if they've logged in, giving them value on that like quick ladder. Now, users don't remember workflows, guys. They remember rituals. So borrowing from a great book, Atomic Habits, is kind of like a meme now, but it is a good book. James Clear's Atomic Habits, it talks about how rituals are better to create habits than just actually saying, I'm going to start doing this. Like quitting smoking, it's better to have a ritual where you quit smoking. At 9 a.m. I do this, 10 a.m. I do this, and then XYZ. It's better than just saying, I'm going to quit smoking. The best onboarding for SaaS attaches your product to existing user behaviors. So Slide, which is like a knowledge-based tool, does this really well. During onboarding, it sort of asks you, what's a task you do weekly that always requires digging through old docs? After the user answers, Slide will also create templates and insert reminders, that kind of thing. So in general, what it's asking you is, what is something that we can solve immediately? And then it is helping you build a habit around that. Now, in general, how I do this with SIA is that every single day they get emailed new leads. And this forms a habit that every day users log in. I see the data that when around about 9 p.m. UK time, when users receive this email, I get an influx of logins to the app. And that creates somewhat of a habit. If I'm emailing them every day with new leads, they're going to come back to the app, This works because it anchors to a real habit. So like a weekly task or a daily task, whatever it may be, it solves a micro problem immediately. So for that, for Slide, it's, a document chaos. For SIA, my SaaS, it's something like, finding leads every day and not having to search for them online. And then, it leverages these time-based triggers. So for example, every single day at 9 p.m., the users get the email. And this sort of is what the basis of a habit stack is, And for the solo founder, habit stacking is sort of like multiplication. It turns your product into a character in the user's daily story, Now, AI is the onboarding co-pilot. So solo founders can now deploy AI that feels human and that kind of thing without having to hire a team or anything like that. And oftentimes we can use this to, kind of trick the user into thinking that we have this amazing like overhead understanding of their business, but we are just using AI. So Ellie, which is like an email automation tool, the onboarding uses a GPT-4 powered chatbot, just using their API. It says, what's the last email you wish you had time to write? It drafts it in the user's style based on, other emails they've written, and then it offers a one-click setup. So in general, you can use AI in the onboarding process. Just be careful with, over-engineering things and it being boring or it not making any sense. Don't just put AI there for the sake of it. Remember that we should always bias to tasks being done. But an example is that the first couple of leads that people get from Sia, I explain why those leads are relevant to their business by just sending the data to ChatGPT's API. And it will say, we handpicked these leads for you because of ABC, So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about is AI is the onboarding co-pilot. How can AI help you in that process? It's going to be different for your app, but that's how I use it in mine. And the key principle is that you use AI to show, not tell. So let users experience their own kind of like discovery through the AI's output. So don't just, demand that they do this task and that task. Like we talked about earlier, the peekaboo moment and like the aha principle, it's about users discovering their own way as opposed to just being pushed down, a stupid sort of like modeled route. Now, listen, guys, you can kick users out of your SaaS, right? So you can admit that a user is not the right person for your software, and that's absolutely fine. Not all users either deserve your onboarding energy. So it's going to take a lot of time and energy to onboard users to your software. And you've got to make sure that you are picking your battles because some people will just not be bad fits for your tool, right? So you can use onboarding to repel bad fit users. So Tetra, a wiki tool, does this by asking signups to choose your setup speed. So if it's fast, like auto imports from their other data platforms like Slack or Notion, or detailed, which is like a long custom setup, users who pick detailed get a warmer onboarding and more touch points, Those who pick fast get more sort of automated emails and they nudge them towards these sort of more low effort wins. Now, the choice signals their commitment level. So if I log into things, I typically say I need like a manual, slower onboarding because I'm there to learn the tool inside out so I can get the most value from it. Some people are lazy. Some people just want a quick win, and that's okay. Like they can pay for that as well. But for the solo founder, this is crucial. Your onboarding should qualify users just as much as it educates them because that'll be a clear teller of what you should focus on and who you should put your efforts into. Now, when onboarding lies, this is a problem. So beware the temptation to sort of overpromise. So you can set unrealistic expectations like get 10,000 visitors in 5 days or get 1,000 leads or get 10 more sales, whatever it may be, but that breeds resentment. Instead, you should embrace this sort of constructive honesty of we don't know what's going to happen, but we know that you'll get results if you put the effort into our app. So their onboarding email says something like, SEO is a marathon. Ahrefs never claims that they're going to give you quick wins with SEO overnight. They guide users through this sort of checklist that's focused on the technical basics of how to get SEO results, not these stupid vanity metrics like let's get 1,000 visitors to your site today. This sort of aligns with Daniel Pink's truth selling concept, which is buyers trust guides who acknowledge the grind. So again, if you're watching this is what my videos are like, guys. I'm not telling you that you're going to get 1,000 users overnight for your software. I'm just telling you that how we got thousands of users for Response and then Comb and then Sia is by just setting realistic expectations, doing a lot of marketing, doing a lot of sales, taking a lot of calls. And I'm telling you that you can make a software with customers and that it makes you money if you actually put in the work. Now, that makes me more trustworthy because I'm telling you that it's not an overnight success and you can't just get loads of customers and sell your business for 10 million overnight. And ultimately, truth is what people value the most and honesty. And that's why so many, I suppose so many people online, they sell this overnight success and then people buy their $15,000 course and then it's all just a big scam. It's just a nightmare, So onboarding doesn't end when a user clicks get started either. So for the solo founder, the true test of onboarding isn't just the first impression. It's how the experience matures into a sort of dialogue between the customer and the founder. So in other words, you've got to make sure that your onboarding feels supportive And it shifts from teaching users your product to teaching them how to teach themselves. So you're sort of turning people into collaborators and creators. So essentially, great onboarding sort of mirrors a mystery novel. So there's unanswered questions, and then you have to get to the next stage to get those answers. And traditional sort of success metrics, like 7-day retention, whatever it may be, it sort of misses the point of why we're building software. We're building software so people can discover solutions to a problem. Take a code editor, right? So after setup, it might ask, what's a project that you've been procrastinating on, and how can we use AI to fix it or build it? Once the user answers, it auto generates like a bit of code and then explains how we're going to get to the next step. The user's first task isn't to learn how to code or learn how to edit. It's to fix the bug that, the AI editor has built. So what you're doing is you're sort of creating this narrative and then dangling a sort of carrot in front of them saying, look, you need to go to the next stage. With SEA, for example, I might send them leads that say this user could have been looking for your tool or could have been looking for your offer, but you missed them. Those kinds of things create curiosity, like I said, and then obviously it leads them to be like intrigued by what is going to happen next. Now, the user-generated onboarding paradox. So essentially, what you should aim to do, and this is one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard, what you should aim to do is build a software that people like to build content around. So clay.com do this really well. Clay is like a lead generation tool. And there are thousands of people making videos about Clay. There are thousands of people making videos about Cursor. There are thousands of people making videos about Lovable, another code editor. I've made videos about Cursor and Lovable. Essentially, you want to try and aim for community playbooks to be built. So you can embed like a community playbook section in your dashboard of your tool and let users submit tutorials or videos or things like that. This isn't going to happen early on because you're going to have like 10 users and no one's going to care. But ideally, what you're going to have eventually is a self-updating library of these, onboarding paths and reasons to use this and how to use that and how to use that. Because ultimately, users trust peers more than you. And by commoditizing their expertise and by putting them in these libraries, you turn onboarding into a collaborative ritual. And that is effectively how we used Response. There were people on YouTube talking about Response and how to build video campaigns with Response and stuff like that. This got us an insane amount of traffic, and we were able to use those videos as tutorials inside our own SaaS. And that just looks really cool, guys, and makes you feel, like a pretty serious app. Now, unonboarding. So sometimes the best way to onboard is to take a step back. So the paradox of choice by Barry Schwartz. Unonboarding means, deliberately letting users flail around and sort of not know what's going on to trigger self-driven discovery. Now, I'm not so much a fan of this because I just want the SaaS to guide them in the right direction. But in enterprise SaaS and like bigger tools, sometimes a solo founder's, CRM tool, for example, if you build a CRM, it might create an untitled sales pipeline. So you might see this, guys, that when you log into some kind of tool, sometimes it might say that there's something like blank, and the blank is what opens that curiosity loop. So a CRM might say there's an untitled sales pipeline and there's just like fake data in there, like Acme Corp, 5K, contact is Steve Edwards, whatever it may be. And then it just doesn't do anything to help you. And you're having to click around and sort of flail around and learn what the tool does and why things are where they are. And this obviously creates a culture of hard-working users. So you shouldn't, make your users work that hard. But if your tool is expensive and there's a lot of support involved, then allowing users to jump in with no sort of life jacket can sometimes be a good way of getting people to really sort of buy into your tool, Now, in general, users, when faced with an incomplete system, to start clicking buttons to fill gaps, and their actions reveal sort of what their sort of mood is, or sort of what they're looking to achieve. They might rename the untitled pipeline to enterprise leads, and that surfaces to you on the back end, because you can see what users are doing on your server, surfaces that they are targeting enterprise, for example, or if, for example, they rename it to recent plumbers, you just know that they're targeting plumbers, that kind of thing. Now, the ownership of this is that they build their own setups. They graft their tool like Clay into, or like Play-Doh into their own tool with their own sort of worldview and sort of like I suppose approach. Their flailing shows you what's non-obvious as well. So sometimes it's good to just allow users to jump into a tool and not be guided, to see if it's clear to them what needs to be done in the first place. And then it reduces support load. So if you want to be a bit lazier and say, look, I'm not going to, I'm not going to help a user when they log in, it's okay to be like, all right, I'll just let them flail around, and then it'll show you what is going wrong with the tool without you having to do direct support. So it does save you a bit of time. I personally recommend that you just put as much effort as you can into new users, because this is what, will get you sort of like raving customers. Now, solo founders, so if you're like me or you're like some of you guys building software, you can't A/B test everything, but you can steal a tactic from Replicate, which is where they track micro abandons. So moments when users pause mid-flow and they leave, or they give up, or they rage quit. So a user might stop halfway through connecting their database, and instead of a need help pop-up or like being pushy, they just send a simple email that says, hey, I noticed you didn't finish the setup, with something missing. And in essence, it's just encouraging people to jump onto the support, and 80% of the replies, for example, might reveal unspoken fears. So like, will this will this delete my data, or will this break things, or whatever it may be? And that's when support mode is activated. And these micro abandons are gold, because they expose the hidden beliefs behind your tool. So I had an email today saying, are these leads old? So my tool for SEA, it scrapes Reddit every day, basically, and it scrapes Twitter every day and that kind of thing. And people were, there have been a few people who have said, are the leads old? But the leads are from today, because they get scraped daily and then you get leads sent to you. And I said, no, like they're scraped every single day. But that is a belief that maybe a lot of users have. So I've now put in the app, these leads are from 2 hours ago, or 6 hours ago, or 3 hours ago. And it means that they know that they're recent, and they don't have to guess, and they don't have to go to the Reddit post to see, or whatever it may be. They know that the leads are relevant and recent. And that's just something I took for granted. I just assumed people knew that the leads were recent, So fix them, and you've not only improved onboarding, but you've preempted churn. So you can stop people from churning because you know their hidden beliefs now. Now, the end game of onboarding is sort of enlistment. So Raycast, which is like a productivity tool for your computer, they let users build these custom extensions during onboarding. It features the best ones in like a newsletter, and then it offers like a revenue share if others install the extensions. So soon, these big users of Raycast were hosting, like Twitter Spaces and stuff like that to teach onboarding for their plugins, not for Raycast. But the tool became like a big accelerator, because it morphed into some kind of talent show, like who can create the best, extension for Raycast. And that, by virtue, is creating a growth flywheel for Raycast, because people are just talking about it, just like we talked about earlier with Lovable and Cursor and Clay and things like that. And so that is what I would have to say, guys. So in essence, when you're going through the onboarding process, you need to make sure that things are clear. You need to make sure that you understand where people lose, I suppose, interest in the tool, and why people are not taking those next steps. So it might be that they're launching a campaign, or they're creating a page, or they're adding some data. If they're not doing this, you need to understand why, and you need to make it like a magical process for them. And from there, that's how you can sort of breed ecstatic users who are going to be sort of sharing your tool and learning about it. And ultimately, the best tutorials are from other people, not just these like stale tutorials from you and like very clinical tutorials and bland tutorials. But if users are building tutorials themselves for your tool, reach out to them and say, look, I want to use this for my onboarding because it seems like a useful thing to do. So that's what I would say, guys. Obviously, onboard people like you really love them, and they will love the tool, and they won't cancel. And if they do cancel, then you're obviously in that position where you've got to understand why. Now, infinite onboarding. So onboarding is fractal. Each stage of the user journey, and when they discover a new feature, when they hit a revenue milestone, they invite a teammate or anything like that, you can invent these micro sort of moments faster than any like corporate team, because corporate teams are boring. And if you're a solo SaaS founder, you can do fun things. The core remains. The best onboarding doesn't feel like onboarding. It feels like the user's getting away with something, or discovering something that their friends don't know about. And then they might share the tool because they're so excited. When you achieve that, the product ceases to be a tool. It becomes more of like a co-pilot, like an agent for their life. So that's what I would say, guys. Focus on building SaaS that becomes a main character in the user story, and you'll be good to go. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.